In terms of the substations, instead of in recent years, such as in Garberville, do you think those have been performing their assigned duties, their planned for obligations adequately? And would you want to set up more or do more with ones at the
We're going
sheriff's
to do a little
department?
bit of reorganization. We're going to aggressively go after federal rural law enforcement grants, which are a big thing right now. I don't think they're doing as good a job as they can. Talking to folks in those areas, Willow Creek, we had a debate, and many people came up to me and said, we are not satisfied with the police service up here. I've talked to Hoopaw. Hoopaw is not satisfied with the police service. Matter of fact, Hoopaw Tribe is supporting me in my campaign. And they're not happy with it. I've spoke to people in Garberville, and several of those folks have told me, no, we're not happy with them. The issue that we have with Garberville is you have deputies responding from either Fortuna or Eureka every day to go down there, and then they have to drive an hour back. So there's an hour down and an hour back. My opponent says where they're getting good coverage on Highway 101. I've been a cop for 30 years, and I think the last hour that a deputy's driving back, they're not looking for a whole lot. It's just kind of the nature of the beast is they're trying to get home. So they're not getting more coverage on the highways. They're not getting a buy-in with the deputies down in Garberville because they don't live down there. If we're in order to reconnect with the Southern Humboldt folks, you need to have deputies that live down there. Now you do have a sergeant that lives down there and he does a good job, but you need some deputies down there.
Now, in terms of political reform, it does seem like this is one of the more hotly contested sheriff's elections, certainly I can remember, and money is playing something of an influence. Would campaign contribution caps, such as the ones that they have in Arcata elections and are being proposed for Eureka elections, is that something you'd like to see in a sheriff's race? And also term limits. Mr. Philp's obeying sort of a voluntary 2-term limit. Is that something you'd like to see made permanent?
Well, yeah, my opponent has a lot more money than I do. He's got Sheriff Phelps' campaign machine behind him and several other folks. Money doesn't mean everything. I think the folks in Humboldt County want a change in Humboldt County. They're tired of the status quo service, and they want some new blood in it. So in terms of term limits, I think that's kind of self-regulated. I think when people are tired of the service for whatever reason, that the people will stand up and say it's time for a change. And I think we're at that point now. Money issues, I think there's a lot of money. The amount of money that goes into these campaigns are just ridiculous. But I think it's again the nature of the beast. But money's not everything. It's the message. It's where we want to take the sheriff's office, and that's why I'm confident that I'll be the next sheriff of Humboldt County.
One additional question. The Humboldt County Sheriff at this point is the only SWAT team in the county. Eureka PD used to have one and then disbanded under Chief Nielsen. Do you think Humboldt County really needs a SWAT team considering its low population rural nature? And if so, how would you want that SWAT team regulated?
Well, we do need a SWAT team. We have some very bad people up here. And SWAT tactics is a whole special training, and when we need it, and things need to be done correctly. And you have to have some very well-trained officers, and I think we do, the deputy sheriff. Deputy sheriffs are very well-trained in those areas. I've watched them. I've been out on calls with them, and they try to do everything right. And I think it's imperative that we have one. On those occasions when we have a barricaded subject, a very violent subject, a hostage negotiation or a hostage situation, we need a SWAT team. But they have to work in concert with the hostage negotiator and mental health. It's one component of a bigger group that makes these types of call-outs successful. So that means working with the rest of the community, the mental health folks, to bring a positive resolution to these types of situations.
You mentioned working with Native American tribes. So what kind of special challenges do you think the tribal communities around here face, and what do you think the Sheriff's Department really can do to address that?
Well, a couple things. First of all of the deputies are going to be very well versed in Public Law 280. And then they're going to use Public Law 280. We're going to reconnect with the Native American culture. We're going to have liaison officers on both sides. So when you go on to Native American sovereign land, you have a contact and you ask permission. We've had several incidents when people come on to sovereign Native American land and do some type of administrative violation, and they're not contacting the Native Americans, and they can't do that. We need to work closely with them. We need to appreciate and respect Public Law 280 and their sovereign lands, because that's what it is. It's their lands, and we need to ask permission. Not all the time, but we need to build that bridge so we can have more trust between the Sheriff's Office and the Native Americans. And that's going to be another priority of mine.
And code enforcement's been also a subject of some discussion. They had a whole code enforcement task force, met for over a year, issue a report. Some said the Board of Supervisors took some parts of and kind of left the rest. How do you think that all played out as far as the final recommendations that came down?
It's under the County Council, and I think that's a good place for it. I think it's good that they're not sworn officers anymore. On the occasion where a code enforcement officer needs some help because there might be some officer safety issues, there will be a operations plan set in place, and it's going to be scrutinized by sergeants and the lieutenants before anybody goes out. We're going to take a look at the warrants and make sure that they're proper. And then we're going, again, if we're reconnected with the community, we should know all of these players. If you had deputies in these areas like we didn't have when code enforcement was working last year, we probably have a strong indication. Are there going to be some real bad people there? Should we bring long guns, rifles? Or is it going to be just families that, even if they are growing marijuana? Is it going to be a high-profile type of entry, or is it going to be more of a casual entry? That kind of information you can gather if you're reconnected with the community and you know the folks that in the area where you work.
Any final words for the folks at home as they head for the voting places, the ballots on June 8th, and make their decision as to the next Humboldt County Sheriff?
Well, I think the big thing is, if you take my almost 31 years experience, my education, which entails budgeting and management, different management styles, and then you look at the last 3 years. You look what I have done in the last 3 years with the Dave Gunderson, Chief of Police in Blue Lake, the Chad Larson, the Curtis Hunsinger cases that we put together. I have the best investigative bureau in the county, and that's because I know how to manage people. And then you look at my opponent's track record for the last 3 years. What has he done to better the Sheriff's Office or better the community in his position? And I think it's obvious that I'm the right choice for positive change to bring the Sheriff's Office into a positive direction where we reconnect with the community.
All right, Mr. Hislop, thanks so much for coming in to Has Me today.
Welcome.